This is Chapter 17, Persuasive Speaking. We're going to first start with 5 reasons studying persuasion is important. First, the sheer number of persuasive communications has grown exponentially. Persuasive messages travel faster than ever. Persuasion has become institutionalized. Persuasive communication has become more subtle and devious. And persuasive communication is more complex than ever before. So we have all these persuasive communications around us being more devious, being more institutionalized. So we really need to study persuasion so we can use it effectively and ethically. Persuasion is defined as an attempt to get a person to behave in a manner or embrace a point of view related to values, attitudes, and/or beliefs that he or she would not have done otherwise. And the first type of persuasion is a change in attitudes, values, and beliefs. An attitude is an individual's general predisposition towards something as being good or bad, right or wrong, or negative or positive. A value is an individual's perception of the usefulness, importance, or worth of something. So we can value a college education, or technology, or freedom. Then beliefs are defined as propositions or positions that an individual holds as true or false without positive knowledge or proof. We have core beliefs, and these are what people have actively engaged in and created over the course of their lives. So this would be a belief in a higher power or a belief in maybe even extraterrestrial life forms, what have you. Another type of belief is a dispositional belief. And these are beliefs that people have not actively engaged in, but rather judgments that they make based on their knowledge of related subjects. So the type 1 is the change in attitudes, values, and beliefs. And the second type of persuasion deals with the change in behavior. And behaviors come in a wide range of forms, so finding one you think all people should start, increase, or decrease shouldn't be too difficult. So this is what we're talking about when we think of topics for your persuasive speech. And some examples, you can encourage audiences to vote for a candidate, to sign a petition, to drink tap water instead of bottled water. Those are behavior-oriented persuasive speeches. Now next, why persuasion matters. When you study and understand persuasion, you're actually going to be more successful at persuading others. Also, when people understand persuasion, they're better consumers of information. That means you don't just accept things blindly as being true. So when you read things on Facebook and they're like, oh, share this thing to donate $5, or for every like this person gets, we donate a bunch of money and then this doctor will perform the surgery for free. But you need to be a critical consumer of information. So understanding persuasion will help you with that. And then third, when we understand how persuasion functions, we'll have a better grasp of what happens around us in the world. And of course, ethics are a huge issue in persuasion because persuasive messages can be used for manipulation, coercion, intimidation. And as ethical listeners, we also have to analyze messages ethically. And we have a responsibility to do this, to analyze messages that manipulate, coerce, or intimidate. And we want to combat those types of messages with the truth. So if you see someone posting on Facebook or Twitter something completely erroneous or trying to persuade them to do something that they really shouldn't be doing, it's your job, it's your responsibility to provide more factual information. Next, we'll talk about some theories of persuasion. And if you take our ACS 330 class, it deals more with theories within communication. It would get much more into depth with these. But the first one is social judgment theory. This is Sharif and Hovland. And this theory is an attempt to determine what types of communicative messages and under what conditions communicated messages will lead to a change in someone's behavior. And we have a continuum of people's perceptions of attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors. And this continuum helps us decide how it can be more persuasive. So first, the latitude of acceptance. And this is a range of acceptable behaviors or thoughts that people accept within that social judgment. So if we're talking about eating food, my latitude of acceptance, I accept that we can eat cows and pigs and seafood and fish. So those are in my latitude of acceptance. Latitude of rejection. This is the range of acceptable behaviors or thoughts individuals will reject. So I reject that I would eat a dog or a guinea pig or a vegetable. That was supposed to be humorous, but I would reject that we would eat guinea pigs or dogs, mostly because I had those as pets. So that's in my rejection. And then I have a latitude of non-commitment. And this is a range of behaviors or thoughts individuals have no strong opinion for. Now, I don't really have a strong opinion for or against veal, which is baby cow or calf. I can eat it, I couldn't eat it. I'm not morally against it. Maybe I should be, but at this point, it's in my latitude of non-commitment. Now, Sharif and Hovland found that persuasive messages are more likely to succeed when they fall into an individual's latitude of acceptance. We often find ourselves in situations where we're trying to persuade others to different attitudes, values, beliefs with which they don't agree. And so that's going to be really difficult. And to help us persuade others, what we need to think about instead is the range of possible attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors that might exist, that might fall into that latitude of acceptance. Now, the next theory of persuasion is cognitive dissonance theory. This is Fessinger. Cognitive dissonance is an aversive motivational state that occurs when an individual entertains two or more contradictory attitudes, values, beliefs, or behaviors simultaneously. And so this might be when you have two things going on. You want to do one, but you also want to do the other, but you can't do both at the same time, sort of, but maybe you can. And I'll give you some examples as we go through. We do have 3 necessary conditions for cognitus to work. There needs to be an aversive consequence. This is just a strong enough consequence or punishment if you don't change one's attitude. You also need freedom of choice, because if listeners feel like they're being coerced into something, dissonance won't be aroused. They'll just feel forced instead of, well, maybe I should do this, maybe I shouldn't. You want that motivational state to occur. And the third condition is insufficient external justification. And external justification is the process of identifying reasons outside of your own control to support your own behavior, beliefs, and attitudes. And then internal justification is when someone voluntarily changes a behavior in order to reduce cognitive dissonance. And when it comes to creating change through persuasion, external justifications are less likely to result in change than internal. So kind of trying to convince someone to voluntarily change their own behavior is more likely to occur. So one example of cognitive dissonance might be, I always think of, there's commercials where there's a devil on one person's shoulder and then an angel on the other shoulder, and they're trying to tell this person what to do and what not to do, and you kind of go back and forth, and who's going to persuade you? That's what I think of when I think of cognitive dissonance. The next theory is elaboration likelihood model. This is Petty and Caccaccio. Oh my gosh. PNC is what I call it. Elaboration likelihood model. Elaboration is defined as the amount of thought or cognitive energy someone uses for analyzing the content of a message. So high elaboration uses what's called the central route, and this is designed for analyzing the content of a speech. So when people truly analyze the message and really think about what you're saying, they use cognitive energy to examine those arguments. Now, low elaboration uses the peripheral route, is what it's called, when they attend to persuasive messages. And this occurs when people attend to the messages but don't really analyze it or use cognitive energy. And that happens because thinking takes energy, and sometimes we just don't have the time or energy to listen to all the persuasive statements being made at us. So we just don't really attend to it. We do have 2 factors at play when we choose the route to attend to the message. First is ability, and this is if the language or message is too complicated, then people will not highly elaborate on it because they won't understand the persuasive message. So if you don't have the ability to understand the message, you're not going to attend to the message. Secondly is motivation, and whether the audience member chooses to elaborate on the message. Are they motivated? Did they decide to really think about the message that you were saying? So those are the two factors, ability and motivation. And we do have 5 factors that can lead to high elaboration, which is what you really want. You want your audience to really think about your message because you put a lot of time into it. You want them to also put some time into receiving that message. The first factor is personal relevance and personal involvement. And so this is if they feel like they're actually affected by your speech topic, if they're actively engaged with the issue. The second factor is accountability. People are more likely to use the central route to process information when they believe they'll be held accountable for the information after the fact. And with accountability, there's a perception that someone will be watching to see if the receiver remembers the information later on. So hopefully you're engaged in high elaboration of the content of these videos because there's going to be accountability, right? You're going to be held accountable for the quiz questions. So therefore, you're more likely to use the central route to process the information I'm telling you. Third factor is personal responsibility. When people feel they're going to be held responsible for evaluation of a message, they're more likely to critically think about it. And when people feel their evaluation is important, they take more responsibility and are therefore more critical of the message being delivered. So if I said, okay, person A is going to give a speech, and person B, you are in charge of telling person A what's wrong. Well, I'm holding them as responsible, right? And so they're going to have to critically evaluate person A because they're taking responsibility of it. The fourth factor is incongruent information. Some people are motivated to centrally process information when it does not adhere to their own ideas. And you're more likely to pay attention to the speech, specifically looking for flaws in the argument. So you're listening to argue, which isn't the best reason to be listening, but it does lead to high elaboration. And the fifth factor is the need for cognition. And this is just a personality trait characterized by a drive or need to engage in critical thinking. Some people are high in a need for cognition because they like to think about complex issues and ideas. So even if the idea has no personal relevance, high need for cognition people are more likely to process information using the central route. Whew, so those are the 5 factors that lead to high elaboration in the elaboration likelihood model. Whew. Next, we'll talk about the different types of persuasive speeches. First, it's important to know about what claims are. And a claim is an assertion of the goodness or positivity of an attitude, value, belief, or behavior that others may dispute. And we attempt to support the claim we make using some sort of evidence and logic as we attempt to persuade others. So we have different claims to talk about. We have definitional claims, and these are claims over the denotation or classification of what something is. So in essence, we're trying to argue for what something is or is not. Then we have factual claims. And these are claims that set out to argue the truth or falsity of an assertion. So we have factual claims regarding the 9/11 conspiracies. So people are, trying to determine what's true, what's false, who's asserting what. And then we have a policy claim, which is a statement about the nature of a problem and the solution that should be implemented. And this is the most common. With this one, you basically want to say, here's an issue, and here's how we should fix it, and here's why my solution works. That would be a policy claim. You also want to gain passive agreement here. And the goal in this case is to sway one's audience to a specific attitude, value, or belief, but not necessarily to get the audience to enact any behaviors. You also gain immediate attention by persuading your audience to start engaging in specific behavior. So you can gain passive agreement or gain immediate action. Then we have the value claim. And this is a claim where the speaker is advocating a judgment claim about something. So it's either good or bad, right or wrong, beautiful, ugly, moral, immoral. And when making a value claim, it's really hard to ascertain why someone has chosen a specific value stance without understanding his or her criteria for making that statement. And if you make a value claim, you need to make sure you clearly label your evaluative term and provide clear criteria for how you came to that evaluation, because you want to provide facts, not necessarily opinions. Next, we have a variety of ways for organizing persuasive speeches. First, we'll talk about Monroe's motivated sequence. And you can see in the nice little gray chart there the various steps in this sequence and kind of what they mean in terms of how the speaker approaches them for the audience. Just some background, Monroe's motivated sequence is very common and is quite often discussed in various public speaking textbooks. However, almost no research has been conducted that demonstrates that Monroe's motivated sequence is any more persuasive than other structural patterns. But audience members do find this format is more organized, and we all know that good organization can lead to greater persuasion. So just to go through the steps here, first is attention. Just like anything else, you need a strong attention-getting device. Introduce the topic clearly. Explain to your audience why they should care. Then we have need, and this is when the speaker gives a clear and concise problem statement. Needs to be very crystal clear. You need to provide one or more examples to illustrate the need and to make that problem more concrete for the audience. Then the speaker should provide some sort of evidence like stats, examples, testimony that shows consequences of the problem. So you're saying, here's a problem and here's what it's hurting and we need to save the puppies. And then the speaker needs to point to the audience and show exactly how this problem relates to them personally. The next step in this sequence is satisfaction. And there are 5 steps to meeting this satisfaction step. We have statement, explanation, theoretical demonstration, reference to practical experience, and meeting objectives. So with the statement, you want to clearly state the attitude, value, belief, action you want your audience to accept, and you want to tell your audience what your ultimate goal is. With explanation, you want to clearly explain to your audience why they should accept the attitude, value, belief, or action that you proposed. With theoretical demonstration, you need to show how the solution you've proposed meets the needs or the problem. Then with reference to practical experience, you need to reference practical experience that includes maybe examples of demonstrating that your proposal has worked elsewhere, or that your problem will get rid of or that your solution will get rid of the problem in these ways. Research, stats, and expert testimony are all great ways of referencing practical experience. And then meeting objections. As a persuasive speaker, one of your jobs is to think through your speech and see what counter arguments can be made against your speech. And then you want to rebut against those counter arguments. When you offer those rebuttals, it shows your audience that you've done your homework, you're comprehensive, and you know all sides of the issue. The next step in the sequence is visualization. And this is where a speaker can show the audience why accepting a specific attitude, value, belief, behavior can positively affect the future. You want to help people picture the future. And so the more concrete your visualization is, the easier it is for your audience to see the possible future. And we do have 3 types of visualization. Positive method is where the speaker shows how adopting a proposal leads to a better future. So, recycle and we'll have a cleaner, safer planet. Or negative method of visualization, where a speaker shows how not adopting the proposal will lead to a worse future. Or don't recycle and our world will become polluted and uninhabitable. Or you can do a combination of both positive and negative, where you show your audience both possible outcomes and have them decide which they would rather have. Would you rather have a cleaner, safer planet or one polluted and uninhabitable? Right? I'm very persuasive right now. And then with action is the last step in the Monroe's motivated sequence. This refers to the direct physical behaviors a speaker wants from the audience, like flossing your teeth twice a day, signing this petition, wearing seatbelts. And then approval, on the other hand, involves an audience's consent or agreement with the speaker's proposed attitude, value, or belief. So this one you can have action or approval. Another type of organization for persuasive speaking is problem cause solution. And this is when you discuss what the problem is, you give evidence, you discuss what you believe is causing the problem. So what's the cause of this problem? And then the third point would be what the solution should be to correct the problem. It's problem, cause, solution. And the final type of organization we'll talk about is comparative advantages. And the goal of this type of organization is to compare items side by side and show why one of them is more advantageous than the other. And when you're demonstrating comparative advantages, the items you're comparing need to be functional equivalents. So you can't compare apples to oranges, you need to compare apples to apples. So you might compare an iPhone with an Android. That's a fair comparison in terms of phones. But you don't want to compare a PC laptop to an iPod. Those are two very different items, and so it's not really a good comparison, if you will. So that's a lot of information on persuasive speaking in Chapter 17.